Okay, good morning, and for those dialing in overseas, good afternoon and good evening, and to everybody, welcome. We've got the technology up and running, which is always a great place to start. So let me begin by saying that planning for and delivering growth is very much my passion. And over the years, I've seen a marked quality difference in the quality of outcome using the approach that I've created and which I'm going to share with you today. Growth is my primary focus in my consulting and coaching work. And what I'm about to do is simply talk you through how I go about doing it. First and foremost, this process is not about pushing back the frontiers of management thinking to conceive a clever strategy that only a few people have the wherewithal to understand. Business planning and strategy is not and never should be a rocket science. This approach keeps the thinking simple and takes one step at a time, so that your teams can create and implement a clear and compelling plan as efficiently and effectively as possible. So today I'm going to talk about how you secure the engagement and participation of your senior team such that they own the plan that's developed and don't just talk about its delivery, but become active participants in its delivery. And once the team have been through this process, they not only grow their level of awareness about what drives business performance, but also how they lead and manage the business with some increased impact. This framework, which I'm about to share, becomes their playbook. It becomes their Bible and acts as a reference point to come back to help make those commercial and operating decisions based on the fundamentals of what you're trying to achieve with the business. So just a few hints and tips to try and get the most out of this call. Aside from locking the dog away, which succeeded on here, please use the Q&A channel to ask questions. And I'll keep an eye on that Q&A channel for questions, and we'll pause as appropriate in order to make the session as interactive as possible. On that point, please use the chat channel to interact at certain points in the session when I ask you, the audience, for a yes, no, or a score 1 to 5 at certain points in the session. It all helps to make things run more smoothly. So Q&A for questions and chat for interactions, please. So 3 aims for the workshop today. I'm going to share not only what you need to be doing, but also why it's important, because I think you'll find that understanding useful. The program I'll outline is best completed over a 12-week period and involves you and your SLT, that's senior leadership team, working with, developing and addressing the questions your business needs to address. I developed these materials that I'm going to share today whilst in a leadership role, enabling the growth of a business that grew revenue 10 times in 2.5 years to over 37 million. Inevitably, I do become more directly involved with some clients who want me to take a more hands-on role in engagements, typically where speed's of the essence or a more creative spark is required. So the overview today is going to be that from the perspective of a practitioner as well as a course facilitator. I want to share as much as I can, yeah? So to get the most out of the time together, I hope you got a pen and paper ready to take some notes, because there's a lot of content that's going to be coming your way. And thirdly, no questions are off limits for me. Use the Q&A to ask questions, and we'll use the chat channel to interact at certain points in the session. So let's get started. I'm constantly having conversations. I'm currently running at something like over 800 hours a year with MD, CEOs and business owners. And I have a particular point, I've made a particular point to ask and understand where and why the train leaves the track between goal setting and the delivery of strategy to achieve goals. So I would ask you to take a moment as I go through this particular slide and think about your own business and where it might be misfiring when it comes to having a strategy that can be implemented. I'll be asking you to share your answers in the chat channel. Don't worry, only I should be able to see who said what. So there's no cause for embarrassment. So first up is that it's actually a plan for finance. And investors and banks don't make strategy happen. Management does. And we all know that over-optimistic financial projections result in an overhyped budget that your managers disown. More to the point, such finance plans, even if they are realistic, are short on specifying the management actions required to deliver the strategy. Often there's a vacuum. And that thinking has to be done on the fly, under pressure, and it quickly becomes tactical decision making, and the clarity of purpose around vision and mission is lost. So something's actioned and delivered, but it's not the plan. The second point I would highlight is weak understanding. You lack clarity, both internally and externally, about what your business stands for, what makes it distinctive, and why people should buy from you. Your reporting system encourages you to manage on averages rather than highlight the best that can be done. Do the analysis which goes beyond the average to reveal the gems and the dross. There'll be immediate benefits from reallocating resource away from loss-making areas towards the areas of higher profitability. Understanding why certain products, customers, or channels are unusually profitable or unprofitable provides invaluable pointers for future development. Think of your business as a value delivery system and manage it to optimize delivery. Unless you do this, chances are that your current approach results in a vague and unremarkable offer to the market, and the evidence for that is the low growth rates that you're probably experiencing. Third up is what I sometimes just call OTE, overtaken by events. The process you employ is not adaptable to changes in the market, and it reinforces a belief that business planning is somehow a waste of time. The plan is fixed in time and not updated. Events happen. COVID-19, war in Ukraine, Middle East, new market entrants, a sudden price drop, loss of key talent, and you have no flexibility in the plan on how to adapt. It's the one thing I learned from the IBMs and Caterpillars of this world is that when a crunch moment comes, they know how to act. And when they do it quickly because they were prepared. They had a plan B, they had a plan C, and they had a plan D. Priority work continues. The core mission is still delivered. Customers are supported, and the how and the when of what is done is restructured at speed. If anything, the fact external change happens should encourage you to make a plan so that you can choose how to respond more positively when the tide that lifts all the boats has gone out. Fourth reason I would highlight is that you become sidetracked. Time is lost in detailed analysis on low impact issues, and inertia sets in. You get sidetracked on some really interesting questions, but they're not fundamental questions that relate to the achievement of ambitious business goals. What happens is that, contrary to all good intentions, there's a rush job at the end of the time set aside for planning, topped up with a bit of cut and paste from last year, because that makes sense still. And there's little or no consideration for the management strategy on the big fundamentals of what truly moves performance and how making it happen is going to be implemented. And during the execution phase, goals get lost and time sweated on a to-do list, which doesn't materially contribute to the achievement of business goals. There's a comfort in doing nice to-do stuff, but the prize is working on the big priority stuff. And then fifth, business planning is seen as a one-off annual exercise to set a budget and is divorced from management meetings. The strategy away day is productive. There's some good exchanges and some positive, fresh thinking, but invariably, the atmosphere creates a conspiracy of optimism, thinks it's all set fair, but there's no detailed action plan, far less a management process for turning ideas into actions. Don't get me wrong, away days are important, but they represent a one-off exercise unless there's a system for ensuring the conversations turn into actions which are tracked, reviewed, and changes in course taken to make sure desired outcomes are securely delivered. So, those are my top 5, and I ask you in the chat channel to indicate which one resonates the most with you. Just write in 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, or some combination of them all. And I'll be interested to see how this is landing. Okay, got a couple of 2s. Got an all. And got a few 5s coming through. Okay. Okay, thank you. So, that's interesting, a lot of 5s coming through. Okay, the framework I'm going to be sharing today is conceived from multiple schools of thought on how to conduct strategic planning. And it's distilled from all the reading that I've been doing over the years, as well as tapping into online resources and applying different approaches in different environments to get to the practical stuff that works well, time after time. So let me just show you the approach. This is what the overall process looks like that I advocate. And it's important to be set up for success from the beginning, which is why I'll be talking through some get rights on phase 1 today, as well as sharing some insights on phases 2 and 3 that should shine a light on how to execute the plans well. It's my experience that businesses start with good intentions on phase 1, do little or nothing on phase 2, and subsequently fail at applying the strategy in phase 3. This approach encourages you to stitch together all 3 phases of work so that you've got a coherent plan that aligns goals with strategies and the tactical actions for implementation. To be clear, the reasons for failure in execution are frequently due to a rush to execution without adequate preparation and no coherent management execution system that tracks performance against the plan or which offers any fact-based insights on whether a course correction is necessary. Consequently, without feedback, confidence falls away, and the business plan is frequently abandoned before it's had an opportunity to take root. And success comes down to a lot of luck. So, who on earth am I to be saying all this? I've been there and I've done it. Either as a director in fast-paced businesses, having spent over 20 years in multiple retailing, or working as a consultant to large corporates, as well as SMEs over the past 20 years. The QR code that you can scan will take you to my LinkedIn profile, where you can see I've been sharing content over the years on business growth and leadership development. And my work is focused on defining what works and then designing and introducing frameworks that become client processes and systems for scaling businesses for growth. The one I'm highlighting today is a strategy for execution framework that I created to transform purpose into prosperity. So the formula behind it is rooted in some very straightforward principles that include keeping it simple, being evidence-based and managing data during analysis and the execution phase, engaging the SLT and wider staff, and staying disciplined week in, week out, and staying on it. I've been around, I've worked across the UK, Europe, Africa, North America, Middle and Far East. And for me, wherever I've been, the conversation has been about helping leaders define their strategy for execution. Whether that's setting direction that allows businesses to course correct by being more agile, or getting people in an organization to do the right things that the business can afford, implementing a framework that holds people to account. So the reason why this work is so important for me is when it comes to scaling a business and where I add value, I'm concerned to help leaders navigate risk, to define and realize ambitious goals, and to help leaders make it happen in a way that builds a sustainable business that's founded on the principles of being agile, affordable, and accountable. So for me, success is AAA rated in that way, because that is what investors value, and that is what investors will pay a premium to acquire. So in my reading, I found this research really revealing. Ken Blanchard, author of multiple books, 1 Minute Manager being one of those, his organization conducted this research surveying 700 businesses. Now, I'm sure you're already thinking about, when you look at this, which number best represents you. Put it in the chat, I would suggest, not the Q&A, just put down a 1, 2, 3, or 4. So square one, upper left, not a great plan, got it wrong, but boy, did it well. I'm guessing you put out a lot of fires and knocked it out the park. The second top right is a good plan, done well. Well, if that's really you, I think you're going to find the rest of this session boring or a bit like watching me send coals to Newcastle. Third one, lower left, bad plan, bad execution, not a happy place to be, obviously. And bottom right, the vast majority, 74%, what's happening here? And I think it's down to some of the things that we've touched on already, but what are you specifically missing or dropping the ball on? What I find time and again is that you've done the plan in such a way that other people in the organization who did not write it, did not conceive it, did not draw it up, are expected to execute it. And there's a hidden process at work, and that's what I want to highlight today, how to make that journey from vision to action as seamless as possible. So what numbers have we got coming through? Yeah, I see quite a few 4s. Thank you. Okay, so let's press on. I believe we're doing things, but not nearly well enough, yeah? And there's a number of ineffective actions at play. So for scaling businesses, and this is really important, if you don't spell out what your goals are, but sort of borrow them, lift them from elsewhere, because that's what some other people are doing, some other businesses, what you do quickly begins to feel bland, and you're en route to fast becoming a Me Too product or service. Rather, what you need to do is some original thinking and some hard yards to build out from what's unique about your business, set goals around what it is you do that's distinctive, define its scope, clarify what measures of success are, and reject the generic and stand apart from the crowd. It's not the flaw. If not, the flaw of averages will kick in. And when that happens, you end up as just another name on a list, and also ran in the battle to win more with your customers. If you do have a team in place, then encourage conflict to stimulate debate on the issues that matter. Businesses often fall short in goal delivery because the top team is not aligned and it's not working together. Often that's because it's just not had it out. And the debate that needs to happen has been stifled. So any resulting plan is lacking traction, by which I mean it lacks commitment in the work practices and behaviors that bind people together. Managing conflict is a key test for a leader, and how well conflict is resolved is a key indicator on the quality of the leadership team. But use that team at your disposal. Delegate and elevate, yeah? Make sure you got the right team in place that's coachable and can step up. This moment, planning and setting up for success is an opportunity to show what they can contribute and deliver. After all, you want them to implement the plan and not just let that monkey stay on your shoulders. And as you approach the planning phase, think fab. Focus. Are we doing things, talking about things that take us in the right direction? Secure alignment across the team on processes and clearly identify what work matters to deliver results. So let's move on and get some of the fundamental rights. And any questions, please drop them in the Q&A. And as I say, use the chat channel for interaction. So 3 man traps to beware on strategy planning. The first is be sure to go into the planning process with the right disciplined mindset, as well as being clear about the right things to work on. Engage with the team, the SLT, to secure alignment of the plan, because they're going to be charged with its implementation. This process brings the plan and the team together. And thirdly, set up for success. All the thinking done, key decisions made, work plan scoped, and team in place to go with a process to make it real. Most plans are built in an ivory tower by a small group, perhaps only 1 or 2 directors, and have some high-level goals without considering the operational detail required to successfully achieve them. If this resonates with you, put a Y or an N for yes or no in the chat. But what I would advocate is set some big strategic goals, not BHAGs, as they're on a 10-year plus time frame, but set big strategic goals to then work through the strategies that are required to address them. Be sure to understand where value is created in the business and what it takes to create, grow, and sustain it. Map the key drivers, agree the key metrics, and track and measure. I find not many businesses do. It's the exception, believe it or not, rather than the norm. The norm is a P&L. Maybe if you've got a scorecard, you might call it something else like a dashboard, which is a range of measures, KPIs, that come down to about 10 or 12 key measures that tell you whether you're on track or not. Whether you monitor it weekly or monthly depends on the rhythm of your business, but if you do, great, and if you don't, well, you're going to lose out. because you need it for control and not overheating one part of the business at the expense of another. And at an early stage, get ahead and plot out some high-level milestones on a route map that set out what needs to be achieved and what kind of sequence the strategy is to be implemented. This helps you get your head round early around resource requirements, and it helps you begin to think through costs, quality, and time considerations. So what you need to do is you need to bring the team together to determine how a strategy meshes before going into details. Yes, go to a nice hotel, get away from the office, but do the work. And encourage participants to step out of their function to look at processes across the business. Usually this needs a facilitator to stop people jumping to conclusions too early, but bring cross-functional teams together to define the measures of success, metrics that you'll use in a scorecard or a dashboard to track progress, and assign people to complete the work and agree how the work outputs will be signed off, thinking through where resource is allocated and whether it's too much or too little. Make decisions and tough calls. You've only so much resource, time, and money, so spend it wisely. Develop a financial model for the business, but don't become a slave to it. Capture and work with key profit ratios and use scenarios to stress test revenue collapse and cost escalation, and challenge the strategies and how they fit with the stated goals, and if they do, how they might be amended. There's a wonderful quote from Sam Walton, who's the founder of Walmart, which has stayed with me throughout my life. It's very simple. If you're not serving a customer, you better be serving someone who is. Be sure to design the structure and processes in your business to deliver for customers. Resource and capabilities at the right levels in the right place are set up. The structure, which usually built on functional lines rather than on process or project-based concepts, can scale. Functional structures can typically scale, and they can be more robust over the growth trajectory. So that's maybe one that might prompt a discussion later. But second point is create a story. Set out the big picture. Focus on the priorities and bottom out how delivery will be achieved. Make the connection between what the organization's working on and what the individual is working on. Connect the individual to the customer so that they can see, understand, and appreciate where they make their contribution. And turn this story into a huge poster and tell the story not only to your SLT, but to all the teams. Include customers, include suppliers, put it on the walls, put it on your screensavers on laptops, put it in the loo, put it everywhere so that people are in no doubt about what this business is, where it's going, and the role of the individual in the team in delivering it. And follow through by establishing a rhythm with new habits and routines, meetings, conversations, behaviors. Get in flow, yeah? And make sure you put your team in flow by delegating tasks to the right level people, and they've got the tools and that they're capable of delivering. Put it all down on one page. The direction of travel and how to get there can all be summarized in one page. The vision and mission for the business should really clarify its purpose and be motivating to all staff. The stretch goals are set over the life of the plan, and I advocate 3 years. That should span the entirety of the business and be focused on outcomes, not financial results per se. The strategies to deliver the goals should line up for each and be broken down into the more detailed work required to deliver the desired outcomes. Business planning and strategy does not need to be a rocket science. It's about a series of choices and working through the consequences of those choices in a disciplined way, as set out in this diagram. What I'd like to do is tell you where this came from in terms of applying a plan, because it was something that I learned the hard way, if you will, in terms of working out the detail as far in advance as one possibly could. So I became engaged with a struggling biotech that had sales of about £3.5 million and carried over £4 million in debt. And to rub salt into the wounds, had just been handed a £9 million court fine for a copyright infringement. That so happened, surprise, surprise, to disable its primary technology. And that fine was due for payment in 6 months. So what happened, you ask? A new leadership team was appointed and they set to work. And they did what everybody does and set some goals, but it went a step further and scoped a detailed plan, a strategy blueprint that went from vision to action, 12 components in all. And it's what I now advocate you do with strategic planning, which is to break it down into bite-sized chunks and take one a week to tackle to arrive at clarity on strategy, structure, operating processes, and implementation method. Completing one component a week is a good process. In this process, we also reset some work patterns. I'm a believer in meetings that set and drive the rhythm of a business, from small leadership meetings that surface and resolve conflict, to weekly pulse meetings with a wider team that drive our actions. We use business reporting to drive the meetings, supported by data, clearly defined metrics for the meetings, whether that be weekly, monthly, S&OP, project meetings, and it was all coupled to an ambition that propelled the business with a very strong growth mindset, a dynamic leadership team, capable people. Add that strategy blueprint and you have got liftoff to over 35 million in turnover and an additional 200 FTEs in 2.5 years, adding over £100 million in enterprise value. So today I'm going to talk through how to set up for success. And at the end of the session, I'll be offering the opportunity to speak with me in more detail, to review goals, your goals, current resources and processes, and the gap you want to close. If you want to, or would find such a conversation helpful, no charge, use your camera, scan the QR code, and book some time with me to talk. So, top tips for the plan. Set goals. Develop a long list, create a short list, and set out your most desirable business goals. List all the strategies that you could employ and make a selection based on criteria that reflects business values and principles. Be really detailed in describing the rationale and business case for each selected strategy to inform financial forecasts and projections. Sequence and determine any dependencies and make clear who's accountable for the delivery of the strategies and the anticipated time frame. So hopefully this is all making sense. If you could just drop a Y or an N, yes or no, in the chat, and any questions in the Q&A, and we'll move forward with the session. Thank you. Good. Glad it's landing. Glad it's landing. At this stage, having done the work that I've described, most people are tempted to think, done with planning now, we can move on to the next phase, which is execution. And more often than not, the plan's baked and lobbed over the fence to the team to make so. Just like that, or more to the point, not just like that. Except you're not done with planning activity just yet if you want to make things happen in a controlled way. There are three things that are essential to get right to making execution happen. The SLT, the senior leadership team, ask yourself, do they get it? Do they really understand what's involved? Do they want it? Are they hungry? And are they capable of delivering it? With a functional plan, can they create one? All too often, a functional plan that translates the business plan into an action plan in the team unit or department simply doesn't exist, and the head of function is not able to create it. And do you have a stop list? Without one, you're not going to create capacity for change and enable focus, because inevitably business plans are going to be proposing new additional activity. You need to take something out to make room for that to happen. So I'm going to go through each of these in a little bit more detail. But it starts by saying, you know, what you say matters. So repeatedly confirm company values, I suggest, at every opportunity. It removes any confusion for employees and gives them an opportunity to reflect on whether they share these same values. If so, great, they're more likely to engage. If not, let them go. Let them find more meaningful work for them, and you can find someone more aligned to realizing the vision with you. Build your company's performance culture with intent. Don't think people are automatically checked in. Prior to starting a planning cycle, ask yourself, do they get it? Do they want it? Are they capable of development? And that means actively hiring, reviewing, rewarding, and recognizing competent personnel based on your company values. Data-based management can sound like a tax for many, but you know what? People love to win. And to do that, they need to know where they're at. So what gets measured gets done. And if you're not measuring, you'll never know if you're winning or losing. So equip your team with data so they can reward teams who can meet and exceed goals, or develop motivational strategies for those who need an extra push to help get it across the line. As I was suggesting, more plans fail here because of a rush to execution. Contrary to some beliefs out there, this is not perpetual planning. Encourage functional leads to break their thinking down into bite-sized chunks so strategies can be implemented and shared with their teams, and engage constructively on resourcing requirements with them. Don't just cram down a number. That is wholly ineffective management. Share, encourage sharing. Sharing helps understanding, and that ensures alignment. In the work that I do, as I was saying, I find many functional leaders are not ready to complete this step. They need help, whether it's hand-holding, templates, coaching-led conversations. Many a functional leader can meet expectations, but when thinking about themselves and their team, somehow they're unable to set expectations. Often the challenge is that it's all too unknown, abstract, and uncertain. You may see it, but very often a functional lead further down the business can't really see what they need to do to shape and lead their team strategically. They're very good on task, because that's how they've grown up. But on preparing the ground for what needs to happen, that's very often a development need. Please don't assume it's going to happen on its own just because you're paying what you think is a lot of money and a big salary. Good strategy is a series of big and important decisions which define the handful of things a company is going to focus on in order to stand out in the market. Sometimes that means letting go of the past. Layering on and adding on can be confusing. A good strategy also includes decisions about what a company is not going to do. Cull all non-value add, redundant activity that does not align with the goals. This is really important because it stops strategy getting lost in the busyness of day-to-day business. Often I see teams trying to do everything to everyone. They prioritize everything and thereby prioritize nothing and dilute effort and fumble around on what matters most. There's nothing worse than seeing a new strategy being layered on existing activity that should cease. And finally, communicate, communicate, communicate. And when you're bored with it, communicate again, because just at that point, the message might be beginning to get through. It's a hard lesson. It's tiring, but it takes discipline. Keep communicating. There's a second case study I'd like to share, an engineering business that had lost direction and gone stale. It was flatlining. It was a sizable group made up of 5 different entities and turnover well in excess of 50 million, employing over 200 people. First of all, the senior team embraced the process that I'm outlining and looked into the business with fresh eyes and really interrogated it and set some really distinctive goals. They did what they termed heavy-duty thinking to clarify the rationale for the strategy to achieve goals. They broke those strategies down into the functional plans and they tapped into the teams. People's brains come for free when they show up at work. And the directors set the goals and posed the questions of the teams on how to achieve them. For sure, there was challenge on the rationale. And unlike me working with the biotech, I here was partnering the business and holding the ring to foster constructive conflict and debate. We originated, I think, some great ideas on where to measure time and stand out and enrich the product with service offers. And everybody became immersed in the detail of the business and got creative with a fresh perspective because they had data and they focused on being clear on accountability to get things done. There was restructuring. Some parts of the business went in little MBOs, management buyouts, which injected cash and eased funding, but profits doubled in the first year, and they doubled again in years 2 and 3, and had a very energized leadership team. So be clear in this phase on what success looks like and how you know when you're there. Establish key measures that are lead indicators on project progress. Prioritize the die in the ditch projects. Prepare the ground. Don't just think about the hard wiring of what's required to deliver the plan in terms of structure, process, and resource. Take the opportunity to build the culture required to deliver the strategy developed. One instance, I was with a client who introduced a red card and a green card to highlight good and bad behavior. It's a great system. Empower junior staff to speak to power, when calling out value transgressions. It's not wokery, it certainly wasn't a cult either, but it was just being clear on what contributes to positive performance and what detracts from it. And above all else, just keep it simple. Keep it simple, gets it done. So hopefully making sense. If so, YN in the chat channel, and any questions that are coming to mind, however you want to frame them, just pop them in the Q&A, and we'll move on with the session. So we've done phases 1 and 2. Let's now look at execution. And here is when an execution management system is required that sets out objectives and measures of success. We talked about a scorecard previously. That comes into play here, but that you plan resource and capacity plan for delivery, and people around the business understand what needs to be done and take accountability. So, as mentioned, a management execution system is essential for ensuring and tracking progress, and it's frequently something that gets missed. And I suggest if you don't have one, you could do far worse than embrace OKRs. The way it works is, as part of the strategy blueprint that's completed, you define annual goals for year 1. That is an essential prerequisite, is that is one of the key handoffs into the execution phase. It's like the start of the process for setting quarterly OKRs. For those who don't know about OKRs, we could have a conversation, but it's an acronym short for objectives and key results. It's one of a number of management execution systems, but it's the one which I think is the best because it's preciously simple, as you'll see here. So the annual goal is broken down into quarterly objectives, which define what's to be achieved and what success looks like, and who owns the activity and is accountable to the outcome. Key results specify the measures of success that you're working towards, and more detailed work defines specifically how the outcomes are to be achieved and with what resource and schedule. And they're cascaded well, and you may just have 1 or 2 layers to manage through in terms of a cascade. Everybody should have an OKR that's aligned to an annual goal so that they can see and experience how they contribute to overall efforts. Work habits and patterns. How do you manage your time? Do you have a plod and a plow, which simply put is a plan for the day and a plan for the week? Be present with your team, yeah? Lead a team pulse. What needs to be achieved this week? What resource needs to be moved to guarantee it'll happen? You track and review progress in monthly meetings and complete quarterly resets. And you have one-to-ones with a team, minimum one-to-one or 1 per month, and track overall performance and link that to a performance management system. Do that, and you'll have at least 3 days free a week to conduct internal strategic reviews, whether you use a PMO or other forum to do such things, as well as going off to meet customers, suppliers, partners, new prospects, new potential. But whatever you do, make a regular feature of celebrating success, whether that's on a Friday afternoon or the last day of the month. Celebrate. If work's not fun, you just don't have the right team. Third case study I would share was a people-led service business, highly profitable business, which was very high on purpose, but activity would drift where there was no urgency, people would invent things to do with good intentions, but they were not entirely consistent with the priorities of the business, or for that matter, delivered with any impact. So when we introduced the staff a revitalized vision and plan for the business growth, we told a story with a sporting theme, using sporting characters and symbols to help communicate where the business is going and how it's going to get there. It also outlined what part was played by different teams so that individuals in those teams could clearly see their role and contribution and begin to feel more accountability for what was expected of them in future, as well as how significant, however modest their role, their contribution is in adding up to the overall achievement of the greater whole. We then followed through with a refreshed meeting cycle, quarterly, monthly, weekly, to reset the drumbeat for the business and ensure relevant conversations are taking place at the right level. This was all supported by management performance systems that support capability development so that things got done and improved over time, rather than catching people out on an ad hoc basis, all of which helps to tune up the culture and encourage a much stronger performance management focus. And that impact was reinforced by some really purposeful community-based projects to build team culture, coupled to recognition schemes where everybody celebrated progress and success. In people-centric businesses, such activity is not a luxury, it's a necessity. It really is. Turnover following the introduction of this system doubled in the first year and went on to do so again in year 2, with a huge focus on the North American market, which was previously thought unthinkable and beyond reach. So top tips is find and select and deploy a management execution system. OKRs, I think they're great, but could be management by objectives, it could be North Star metrics, it could be a balanced scorecard. Whatever it is, select it and stick with it. Design a set of core meetings for the business, clear objectives and agenda, and who's required to attend, so that decisions can be taken by the right people in the room, and create and tell a story. Make it light, have some fun with it, and make it personal to the business. So there you have it. Most businesses are missing a framework that ties, the vision and action together. It's why, as per the research findings from Blanchard, 80% of good business plans fail at the execution phase. So I'd encourage you to use this framework and let it become your company playbook, your way of what it is you do, stand for, and how you're going to put your dent in the universe and make it happen. Until it's written down and it's summarized, it won't happen. It won't happen if it stays in your head. Don't fall short and fail to join the dots, yeah? The blueprint can become your guide and your helpful friend in execution. It creates a vocabulary and a language for how to manage a business. It'll allow you to lead meetings with a focus on outcomes and actions that generate outcomes. And it links the individual to the team, to the goals. It gives a clear line of sight to outcomes and how the individual contributes. And keep it simple. If it starts to get complicated in any way, shape, or form, it will not work. So hopefully that makes sense. Yes, no in the chat would be helpful. Any questions? pop them in the Q&A. We've done with phases 1 to 3. So great. How does a 12-week program work? The 12-week program has 12 modules as shown here, and we do one a week. And if you'd find a conversation helpful, use your camera, scan the QR code, and book some time with me to talk about it a bit more. But the work pattern we go through here is I do a briefing in a group on a Monday morning, takes about an hour on one of the components, and you do some work, engage the team, and we catch up on a Thursday, your company only, in an exclusive one-to-one with you and your colleagues if you want to bring them into the room. You can do this with you leading the process, or if you want to delegate it to an SLT member, but it's good to have it distributed across the team in terms of the work for obvious reasons, as I've outlined. That key person or you will have access to the workbook with all the templates that I've created over time. For my money, this is a great way to use planning as a team development opportunity and have your entire SLT on a group call. Everybody that's been through this, that I've experienced, talks about how much they get out of it and how much they can see ideas then being turned into action plans. So I've successfully completed this process with a number of businesses in scale-up mode and delivered outcomes which have resulted in turnarounds as well as sales and profit growth. And as I'm suggesting, there's been multiple benefits arising from the process, covering both personal development for leaders as well as delivering some hard business benefits. But I think the most important one is actually leaving behind a framework that's owned by the respective teams for how to plan for and make things happen in the business. So if you want to talk, there you go again, the QR code. It's a blend of group and one-to-one coaching where I share the detail, what's being described today, and provide some guidance on how to apply it in your business. The way it works is group sessions are to describe and clarify the process and the tasks required to complete the work step, and a one-to-one with me, which is company specific on how the process applies to your business and reviews the content you and your team generates. Mondays, group session, Thursdays, one-to-one with you and or SLT, and that's the rhythm that we follow. When I do this work as a coach consultant, it costs more than what's indicated here. Much depends on the amount of work that's required in each area, sometimes starting from zero in some areas, sometimes disentangling quite a complex picture that's a function of history, family, or a lack of integration in how some parts are intended to come together. It can vary. However, it's more expensive and involves me directly as compared to guiding businesses through the process in the way which I've been outlining here. So if you're interested, like a conversation, please scan the QR code to schedule a call to address resourcing, any concerns you may have, share your starting position, and confirm or otherwise whether you would fit with the program. It's not going to be right for everyone. That I can be certain of. So to summarize, 12-week program, deliver a blueprint. It's a document which is typically 10 to 12 pages, a Word document. There is a power in terms of writing it down rather than leaving it to slides, which can be quite loosely interpreted. You start the week with a weekly briefing on process from me and set some expectations on content production by you. And towards the end of the week, we review your work and make adjustments as necessary. And in particular, I become your accountability buddy to get things done and make sure the work is actually progressed and that there's a quality standard to it, which is an important facet of this process. So there's just 4 places available, I should say. So if you want to book time in my diary, there's the code. But hopefully that content that I've shared was useful, and I hope you found it valuable. So let's go through the Q&A. So we've got one here. How would you influence an entitled, intransigent and bullying charity board to accept their need to change? I've actually worked with a charity in precisely this set of circumstances, and I'm not saying it's easy. It takes time, and it takes education, frankly, in terms of a process. And more often than not, and I'm thinking about this particular instance I had first-hand experience of, we actually ended up in a situation where we actually changed some of the board members out, which I'm sure you appreciate is not a straightforward thing to do. It sounds like an easy magic wand thing to say, but it was tough. But yeah, charity boards can be over large, have too many people sitting on there, again with best intentions, but with very little clarity about what their role really is and how they can constructively add value. And I think it is down to the management team and its leader, the CEO, to create that space such that the charity can operate effectively. And that requires a plan. And that requires going through the work process that I've just described. But it also needs some pretty cute stakeholder management. And I've seen this in larger FTSE 250 companies where I've seen CEOs come and go, frankly, because they didn't manage the stakeholder relationships. So it is a process, it's political, and it takes time to deliver, and it ensures at heart that you've got a plan that's not half-baked, that's thought through, that people can see. They may wish to cherry pick and beat back on some of the elements that they don't like, but they can see the full story. And I would encourage you to then ask them for their full story if you find yourself really hitting a roadblock. And that may be a decision point for yourself as well. So I hope that's helpful. But certainly in my experience in the past, it can be a bruising experience. Yes, too big, making management decisions and implementing them as they reference the SLT, organizing multiple board meetings, but refusing to sign off minutes. Feels like some personnel changes are part of the solution here. I think it's almost inevitable, as well as, I stress, having a plan that you can present. So what else have I got? Why so few places? Well, I've only got so much time, and I only want to give my time to provide a sensible and considered level of support to whatever it is I do. So I've been told this could be much bigger, could have bigger numbers, but I think inevitably it would become less personal, less contact. And I think I'd end up being more rushed on my side. So I'm not going to compromise. Oh, the charity has got the entire SLT and they continue to deliver failure. They got rid, sorry, of the entire SLT, right? Okay, well, key issue. I feel maybe I'm happy to have a conversation. If you want to scan that code up there and, you know, take this one in another place and go into more detail about some of the war stories and some of the things that we did. Only too happy to do that. I've got a question for those staying on the call, actually, which is a question for you. So complete the sentence. As a result of this webinar, what I shall do differently is just write a few words or a word in the chat, and let's just see what difference this is going to make. I'll be intrigued. Thank you. Great overview. Well, that's nice to know. Nice to know. It was brilliant. We could all use those words with our colleagues, I think, from time to time. But I'm intrigued as a result of this webinar, what it is that you would do differently. Book a call. Yeah, great. That's a bit of fun. Thank you. I hope you will book a call, and we can continue that conversation. Sit down with a team and rethink things. Great. I hope some of the messages here today help you in guiding that conversation. And I can't stress enough, particularly for growing, scaling businesses, there's an issue here which sometimes gets lost in translation, but there's creating strategy and, you know, the goals and where it is, where we're going, what's the direction we need to head off in. And that is a very creative process. And when you're in a growth stage, and by that I mean anything, you know, over £1 million, and you're in scale-up mode, and you're maybe preparing for some future exit, might be something that's in mind. Work on what makes you distinctive. That will bring you more value and more premium at the end of the day when that transaction takes place, if exit is what you want to achieve, than any other single concept that I could share about the creative side of, you know, producing a strategy. The planning piece, which is what I've majored on today, in terms of how you work it through, is also essential if you want to get it done. You've got to be able to have a golden thread running through so that you can actually make it real and make it happen. But you are working in two spaces, and don't become very procedural about the creative process, but search for data that informs it. Okay, be more focused on measurements. I enjoy the people side of metrics, but find some of the tech measurements a bit dull. Oops. Yeah, I get that. And I think one of the thing around the people side of metrics as well that I've seen really quite effective is linking in, and this is going a little bit further with this kind of process, but this is where it takes you into performance management systems and having a you know, really well set up performance management system that allows you to check in and monitor and track performance on a monthly basis, so that by the end of the year, when it's that time for, you know, salaries and so forth being reviewed, you've got a story made up of the year rather than a memory of what happened, almost inevitably colored very heavily by what's happened in the last couple of months. So building those data sets is really, really important. I like it. So the one thing I'll do differently is explore less diversity and simplify business. Yep, I like that. I had a New Year resolution for myself at the beginning of this year, which I would encourage, I think, and would empathize with you in this respect, which was to attempt less and achieve more. I'm as guilty as the next person thinking about stuff I'd like to do, you know, the next shiny, bright thing to chase. And very often, you know, these are distractions that are brought into your life. A bit of focus and narrow it down and achieve more, I think is a good mantra. Attempt less, achieve more. Okay. Well, with that, unless there's any other questions, and come up about storytelling. Can you say more about the storytelling of the business plan and share some examples? For me, storytelling is a key success factor. It's an absolute must do. It helps to convey the why we do things as well as show the road ahead and why certain activities matter. It shows where individual teams as well as the individual fits in. We don't really intend to share any third-party materials here. However, some of the best stories that I've seen are invariably journey-based. River journeys, sporting competitions, spaceships heading off across space, journeys through the jungle and dealing with all the kind of nasty challenges that can happen. You get the drift. It's an opportunity to have some fun, focus on some aspects of culture perhaps that you'd like to address, pick up on some of the things that you want to change and land a serious message, but in a fun way that's memorable and that sticks. And it's well worth the investment and time, because it gets the language used throughout the business. It's well worth it, well worth it. Okay, so do message me directly on LinkedIn with any feedback. I'm always very grateful for feedback. And if you want to set up a call, please scan. You can also go on LinkedIn and under my mugshot, you can press a book an appointment button. I'll say goodbye for now and look forward to picking up with you in future. Have a conversation. Good luck.